everybody, and welcome back to the Real Comics Podcast. I'm your host, Felipe. As with me, as always, is my good friend, Andrew. Andrew, how you doing?
Doing great here for Hellboy
II. That's right. We are back for part 2 of the first week of our Tricks and Treats October event special. That's right. Hellboy II, The Golden Army is what we'll be talking about today. So, Andrew, you ready? You ready to do this?
I am ready. I have my fist ready. I'm ready.
The Golden Army, the unstoppable force.
Oh, crap.
Let's get into part 2 and talk a little Hellboy, The Golden Army. Once again, this film is directed by Guillermo del Toro. And let me give you a quick storyline. In the continuation to the adventure of the demon superhero, an evil elf breaks an ancient pact between humans and creatures and declares war against humanity. He is on a mission to release the Golden Army. Back again are our usual suspects: Ron Perlman as Hellboy, Selma Blair as Liz Sherman, Doug Jones once again will be playing Abe Sapien. We've also got Luke Goss, who's now one of our villains. Anna Walton is also playing Prince Nuada. She's also is she a hero or is she a villainess? Also, we can't forget about John Hurt playing Professor Broom, and of course Jeffrey Tambor playing Manning. Hey, Andrew, you know who's missing from here? Is that Rupert Evans or Meyer?
Yeah, Meyer is not back. And
what do you think about that?
Well, we neglected to mention him in the first one, so I feel it's important to mention him in the second one. Del Toro invented the Myers character, and part of the reason was he felt that he needed somebody to be the eyes of the audience as we explore, discover, and for the first time see this world of supernatural beings and everything that's happening, the whole organization that does it. And that's what Myers' part was. And then he was also there to kind of throw things for a loop by creating like a third wheel on the romance and questioning Hellboy and just kind of sort of replacing Bloom. But yeah, so his role is not as important in the second one, so they wrote him out.
They wrote him out, yes, to stick with it. And well, now that we've gotten that out of the way, and that is a good film point, though, too. And it's the reason we made sure to bring it up here in part 2. You know, from the film aspect of it, when you can take a character and see through his eyes, like you said, that gives the film depth. That lets you know that you are not alone when you take this little journey with somebody else who sees everything for the first time. And I can tell you that added to the enjoyment of the experience.
Yeah, because Bloom's explaining things. Remember they're walking down the hallway and he's, oh, there's the spear, and this is when Hitler died, and just different things. So you start getting this expansion of the world that, okay, this is an interesting world that they live in, and they study the arcane arts. So
right. Exactly. All right.
Excuse me.
The paranormal. I was just going to kind of back that up. All right. So now that we've let you know where Meyer has been and where he's gone, let's talk a little bit about and get your first impressions of Hellboy II: The Golden Army.
I don't like Hellboy II as much. I felt it was just too different than the first one. They didn't go back to a lot of the same things that happened in the first one. I know that Del Toro wrote an original story. Originally, it was going to be based on some more comic book stuff, but they went differently. And you don't have the Nazis in it. You don't have a lot of this paranormal stuff. And it became a fantasy. So instead of a gothic film and kind of a horror film, it's more like a fantasy film. And I don't know, it just wasn't as good to me. That's just my initial thought.
Well, I think you and I are going to be on opposite sides of the fence here. And I'm going to tell you that I actually enjoyed the second one more than I did the first, and I'll tell you why. Because I do believe there is some goth in there, but you are correct in the fact that it isn't your goth horror side. It did go goth fantasy, but that's Del Toro's wheelhouse. And again, what I think most people can't deny is it is a beautiful film. It was enjoyable. The introduction of our villains was amazing, and you know, they kicked off with a bang because you've got a brother and a sister involved in this movie who are on opposite sides of our story. and that played into it real well. I do know that some of the people didn't care for the romance that was in here. It was a little bit heavier on the romantic side, both for our hero Hellboy and his partner Abe Sapien. But I did enjoy it. I did find that the storytelling in this side of it, this was definitely more Del Toro than it was comic book Hellboy. I can admit that. But I enjoyed it very, very much.
Yeah, I think it was just too light for me. And I wanted to continue the first ones. I wanted the Pan Labyrinth feel. I wanted that dark horror. And it didn't feel like a horror movie to me. And I guess that's where it lost me, because to me, Hellboy is more into the horror. And yes, there's a better action, because instead of people in suits, you have an actual person. So you have those great scenes with the gentleman playing the elf. And yeah, there's a lot to like, I guess. But for me, I watched them back to back recently to get ready for this. And it's like, bam. It's like such a turn from what you just watched the first one. You you do a double take. It's so different than the first one. Like, are we sure this is a sequel, or is this something completely different? So
this is what I enjoy, when we disagree and we can do it in a nice, proper, and civil fashion. You know what? When we get into spoilers, I'm going to touch on some things that are going to remind you about the actual horror side of this film that you may have forgotten. And we're also going to talk about how when I watched them back to back, I actually felt the opposite. I could see that, I thought they had upped their game by one, but they did. I mean, I'm admitting as a film goer, they are different films, and you do have valid points, but I think mine, I don't know. We're going to have to duke this one out. What do you say?
Okay.
All right. So that being said, how do you feel about the film? Would you recommend it? Can you recommend it? What are your final thoughts before we get into spoilers?
Can I recommend it? Yes, I think you should watch it, because it's still beautiful. It's still Del Toro in this world. It's different, and that doesn't mean you won't like it. It's just I didn't want it to go that direction, but other people may be happy with the direction it went, like you said. So I cannot say don't watch it, but it's not in my top 10. Let's just put it that way.
Got it. Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm going to say give it a watch, especially if you've watched the first one, because I do think it's a little bit better. And I think they did up their game. This is definitely a Del Toro film. His texture, his feelings, everything that he does when creating creatures for the world are all one-upped and all over the place and all throughout this movie, which is what I think is throwing you off a little bit. And I totally get it, but I'm definitely saying watch the second one. All right. So, Andrew, with our initial thoughts out of the way, are you ready to get deep into our spoilers and facts section of part 2, Hellboy, the Golden Army? So now that we've got our initial thoughts out of the way, clearly Andrew and I are on the different sides of the fence, but let's get into the meat and bones of what we've got here. Let's talk a little bit about kind of what may have you off on a different track as to not liking the film as much as I do. And that is that it's an original story, and they've kind of gone away from the Nazi angle a little bit.
Yeah, and they didn't go back to a lot of what the Hellboy comic is. And I wonder, because, since we just kind of segueing into what's happening next, that maybe that's where Mignola and him kind of had a split in the way they were doing things, because Del Toro took it over and made it more like what he would do.
Right.
So part of it is not being part of the comic, but part of it's just, like I said, so different. You know what I think of when I saw this film? And in a bad way, because I don't like it, Men in Black 2. And it has a lot of that, like lots of creatures, and the creatures are kind of goofy, and I get it, because Hellboy's kind of like, goofy too. He has his one-liners, but it felt like too much goofy, especially when we go into like, what's it called? The troll, it's not Troll Village. What's it called? Like the troll where they shop and stuff.
Right.
And there's just so many creatures, and they were goofy and they were funny. And yeah, it was total to me Men in Black. Like when they go into the headquarters of Men in Black, and all the different aliens are just walking by drinking coffee, and everyone's having normal conversations. It threw me off. It wasn't for me.
Okay. Now that we're in spoilers, I want to bring up a couple of little things, and I see your point. I definitely see it, but we're going to start with why I think it's actually better. I do like the original story. We can beat chasing Nazis to death, and we didn't know what they had coming for the next film after this one, which we'll get into a little bit later. But I liked feeling like I was being brought more. So, the first film took place clearly, in real time, present day, in our world, within our world. This film took us away from within our world and put us within their world. And I enjoyed that a lot. Does that mean I'm a huge fantasy fan? Not necessarily. I just thought it was done well. I did like all the creatures. They were beautifully amazing. They were not just your average goofy, and it irks me a little that you use Men in Black 2, because those creatures are really goofy. They're really goofy. Somebody drew out giant heads with little tiny legs, but these creatures actually look like something off of a D&D or a Dungeons and Dragons fantasy page, or out of somebody who does fantasy art. And I think that there's a difference in there. Now,
yeah, I'll give you that, because Del Toro, yeah.
Right, exactly. And so now going back to when we were speaking prior to on the horror note, while it doesn't have that overwhelming sense of horror feel to it as the first one did, granted, you are definitely par right there. You're dead on. I think, don't forget about that opening scene with what we come to find out are tooth fairies. That was freaking horrific, okay? These little cute-ass fairies floating around, but what their job is, they have these really sharp teeth, and they grind your face down to get at your teeth so they can eat your teeth. That's horror. That's horror right there, my friend. Fantasy, but horror.
But yet none of them bite anybody. They just bite the
How many agents did they take out?
Yeah, I was gonna say they bite the red suits. You know what I mean? But they don't,
right.
They don't bite anybody legitimate.
I hear what you're saying.
Somehow they're able to shoot some out of the air and stuff. I mean, yeah, they were horror. Like I said, it was more fantasy to me than horror, and that's okay. And if that's what people like,
True.
Let's put it this way. If there was just a Hellboy 2 and not a Hellboy 1, I don't think we'd be talking about it in our Halloween special show.
I don't know.
I don't think it would be in there. I think we'd be talking about something else.
Okay, we don't want to go there because we specifically chose these because they were comic book related. This is an original
comic book related horror. You're right.
Right.
But I think if there wasn't a Hellboy 1, which we felt really needed to be part of this,
right,
I'm not so sure Hellboy 2 makes our top list.
I would agree with you. It doesn't make it in there because of the content. It definitely wouldn't. I don't know enough about the comic to know if there is a Prince Nuada, or this was all Del Toro's own. But
this was all Del Toro.
Yeah,
which is okay. But I had bad. To go back to Thor, I had flashbacks of Thor 2, the Dark World with those elves. And that's not his fault because he did that way before. But just seeing the elves for the first time on the screen this last time, it was like, ooh.
Yeah, but again, the actor, Luke Goss, takes that up another level, man. I think he boosts that up another notch with his martial arts expertise. And we're going to talk about him in another movie later on as well, because he also did play the villain in Blade 2. So his martial arts expertise along with his sword play were just, to me, that just added another notch into my enjoyment. But I think we both have some great points. Let's move this thing on. So what do you think, other than those points, is different this time around for us? What's other than that fact that we've kind of broken it down? Is that what's different this time around? Just that it's fantasy versus horror, or what do you think?
Another thing is, I made a big deal of talking about how I loved Abe in the first one. I don't like Abe as much in the second one. I mean, it's not fair. I know obviously the voice is different. They actually have the actor doing the voice this time around versus David Hyde Pierce. It's not just that. It's just there wasn't the gadgets to show him he was out of water the whole time and he didn't wear the gadgets. It's like all of a sudden it didn't matter that he couldn't breathe air. They dispensed with all of that, and they just have him just cruising around like no problem. And that might be a minor thing to a lot of people, but to me, in that comic book continuity, or just these type of movies continuity, it's like, well, how is he able to do this now? It's not explained. And the looks are upgraded for everybody. Liz, I didn't like the sexy makeover, because she got the sexy makeover. She's in a sleek black leather latex type suit. and she has the kick-ass fucking Matrix haircut, and she's looking all hot as can be. It's like, I kind of liked the vulnerable girl in part 1, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I like this version of it. And are they really using her, or is she just a plot device for the whole twins thing? You know what I mean? It just, they didn't, if you're going to upgrade her, let's give her some more action. And I felt like they didn't really give her more action. It's just
okay.
me.
On your one point, I will agree with you. She didn't have enough action that I think she could have. But let me, once again, take the other side of the coin here on this. As far as Abe goes, I think you're definitely right. They didn't have him with the equipment. It didn't seem necessary. I don't think they mention it, but I do remember reading somewhere that it might have had to do with the suit, that his suit was different, so he could be out of water with, I don't know how it worked with his body. I was hoping to have more research on that, but I kind of hit a dead end. And that's why he wasn't wearing the helmet when he was out of the water necessarily. You're right. They did use the voice of Doug Jones this time instead of the voice of David Hyde Pierce, and that did throw me off a bit. That does break continuity for me. But fun fact here, Doug Jones, who, you know, he's not really an actor. I think you've used this word, and I agree with you. He is a puppeteer. He played not only Abe, but he also played, excuse me while I reach down, he played the Chamberlain and the Angel of Death towards the end of this film. So he spent 95% of this film either blind or deaf because of the prosthetics he was in. Can you imagine going through that? So a little bit of props to Doug Jones, the actor slash puppeteer. Something else, you touched on Liz. You know, I think you're right in the sense that, you know, they didn't use her in an action sense, and they were kind of holding her back because we find out in the film, now that we can talk about this in spoilers, that she is pregnant. Later we find out that it's twins, but early on she's pregnant, so they kind of hold her back, and I totally understand that. But here's what I'm curious about. I think they're making her stronger, though. No, she's not that weak, kind of trying to figure herself out, but they've made her a stronger character, a stronger female role in her own mind, trying to figure out what she wants out of her life. Does she want to be the Hellboy, or does she not want to be? What is her role with this group? And I think it's a stronger character.
Yeah, I see that. I just think visually it was too much of a jump visually. Like, she went from like meek to like I said, the Matrix, you know, she was basically Trinity at the point, which they were showing us on screen, you know? And I felt that was extreme, but again, it's just me. That's my thoughts on her. And yeah. And then we have the new character. We have,
right. I was just, no, go right ahead. I was
because Hellboy is doing a bad job of running the show, and he's exposed himself to the public, and it's just a mess. So they decide to bring in someone else to oversee them by the name of Johan, who's a new character voiced by Seth MacFarlane. And he was okay for me too. Because he disappears in the third act. It's like he comes on and he's like this moral voice to Hellboy, and he's trying to help Hellboy, you know, get straight with what he's going to do. And then the third act, he's like way in the background.
Right. No, I agree with you here. This is where I think the movie did fall short. You're absolutely right with Johann Kraus. Johann Kraus, played by James Dodd, and actually picked up by another side character, I think. And I think the reason he got credit is because he may have come back for reshoots. But you're right. Voiced by Seth MacFarlane. I think he tried to be a more stronger, stern character to replace the fact that we lost Professor Broom. And yeah, that's why we're in spoilers. You know, we lost Professor Broom. So, you know, maybe he's trying to set that moral compass. You're exactly right. And then he does disappear in the complete third act after trying to help the others get to where Hellboy is. So he did throw me off. What can I say? Do you have anything more to say about Mr. Johann Kraus?
Just didn't like him very much, but that's perfect sense. They have to replace Bloom. They need that there to kind of keep, because Hellboy can't be the leader of the group, because then they have to mature him and they have to make him behave, and that's no fun. He's supposed to be the guy that breaks a couple rules, bends the rules, you know what I mean, and just does his own thing. So I don't like him as the leader. So yeah, you have to have somebody, and awesome. You know, you lose Hurt, and luckily we get, and that's one of the better parts of this movie, I think, is that little intro with Hurt. that got me excited.
Yeah.
Having him tell the story to Hellboy when you have baby Hellboy, or I don't know, he'd be teenage Hellboy, maybe. I don't know. And that story, to have Hurt back and tell it, that was really cool. So yeah, he was missed.
That was a definitely good moment. But if they stayed true to the comic, that was the one thing they did right. I learned in my research that actually Professor Broom does not survive this just after the first 2 comics.
No, that's why I said he's not a big deal. Yeah. Del Toro expanded his role for the first one.
Right. For sure. And a little side note too, the young kid Hellboy was actually played by a woman, a small woman. Cool. Very interesting. I wish I had her name on here, but the way that they pronounce, I think they had spelled it right, and I was trying to research that, but it was played by a woman. But you're absolutely right in the sense that we do miss him here, but it's almost, again, it furthers the plot point about Hellboy having to grow up and be a man instead of screwing around with cats and smoking cigars and getting trashed. Before we get into the villains, what if you had a favorite moment that you did enjoy? What did you like? If you can pick one, is there something you can find that you liked about the film?
Of the villains?
No, of our heroes or anyone. Just a favorite moment.
Favorite moment? The opening fight again.
Yeah.
He really opens the film well.
Yeah.
The fight with the troll wasn't bad. The juxtaposition of they both have they're big, powerful characters, and he runs into somebody who can pack a wall up on him.
Yeah.
But the character just felt just a touch too cartoony for me. It was for me. I just felt it was a touch too cartoony. But yeah, that would probably be the best.
I think for me, I would have to say, and it's actually one of the more dumber moments when Abe and Hellboy get trashed. They get stinking drunk.
That's
drinking. What are they drinking? Tecate? I can't remember. Was it Tecate?
Yes, he's drinking Tecate. I wonder if they took that from Del Toro's own, ice chest. Yeah, he probably had that in a cooler, and they started. Yeah, definitely.
It's a possibility. They are listening to Barry Manilow and getting hammered and talking about women and life, and it was dumb, but an enjoyable moment. I have to say I like that. So, any more final thoughts on our heroes this time around?
No, that would be where I stand on that. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's get into a little bit let's talk about our villains. Specifically, well, I guess I should say villain, because we have 2 new characters that we're going to talk about, and one is more on the side of good and the other is on the side of bad, and they are brother and sister. That is, of course, Prince Nuada and Princess Nuala, played by Anna Walton, and Prince Nuada is played by martial artist Luke Goss. So what did you think about the introduction of our 2 new characters, and especially the villain played by Luke Goss?
Goss was really good. His motivation made sense to me. I love his speech when they're both, him and Hellboy, are on the roof of that building when they're trying to stop that one tree monster, and he's telling them, this is unique. You kill it, it's gone.
Yep.
Those were some great scenes, and his martial arts was amazing. That opening scene where he kills his father, where he slides under those guys with the swords, that was very cool, Matrixy stuff. Yeah, really good. Now, his sister, I felt was just a plot device. She just was there to have this second romance and to kind of move the plot along. She did nothing for me at all.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you there. We'll start with the Prince Nuada character for me. He's one of those characters that I actually love to dislike, because he has a valid point. He has what he thinks in his mind, the reason for his quest. The reason he's on this mission is the survival of his people and his kind. So for him, it's very important. It is life-sustaining for him and his culture and his world, right? But to do it, we lose ours. So you have that little feeling for him in one respect, and then you find it hard to dislike him in another. But the Princess Nuala, as sweet as she was, and as she was a perfect pairing for this particular plot. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That is a plot device to give Abe someone to fawn after and make, and it was used so that some decisions were made that got our group into situations. Clearly a plot device. Yeah. So, I think I'm right there with you. Good on the bad guy, so on the princess.
Yeah, and the bad guy was really good in the action. A scene I was thinking about while sitting here that I probably should have given a little more love was the end when they're fighting on those gears. It was pretty cool. And they're kind of falling and going under the gears and over the gears to keep that fight going. And that was pretty cool. But
the Golden Army themselves coming to life and how they would be broken down and then put themselves back together was also a cool little twist. I like that a lot. I enjoyed it quite a bit. All right. So we've talked some heroes. We've talked some villains. We talked about what was different, what we liked, what we didn't like. Now we're back to this world. Let's talk a little bit about the look of the film. And once again, we're talking about practical effects. What did you think about that, Andrew?
Yeah, that's the best part of what he does. And it's very obvious they're practical effects. And you have to give him a lot of love for that. There's a lot of great sets. Though I'm not so sure I like the set where the elves live. That felt like they were just hanging out in the sewer. I was like, come on, it's the elves, man. It must have been a budget thing. They should have had their own like kick-ass palace or something. But yeah, it was, a lot of throwbacks to the first with the museums and that type of look. So he did it well, and the troll place was kind of cool, I guess, even though it was Men in Black.
The Street of Trolls. I love the look of the film. And just a little side note, I think you're right. And the reason it does look like they're hanging out in the sewers, because remember where they're at? Once was their world. They didn't move. They just kind of faded into what was built around them. And they talk a little bit about that, and that's why Prince Nuada wants to come out again. He wants to reign supreme over the elves, take over the Golden Army, and put the world back to the way it was when they were younger and his father was in charge. So I totally agree with you. I like a lot of the look of the film. I still like the little troll area. It was great. I got let me see if I can get this here real quick. The guy who plays Wink, which is the other troll who has the giant iron fist. That guy,
something Steele.
Yes, it is right here. It's Brian Steele. He not only played Wink, but he played a character named Crony, and he was the spice shop troll, and he also was the cathedral head, and he was also a character called Fraggle Rump. This guy also played one of several characters and was willing to get into all that makeup and be in this movie. There's a lot of practical stuff here, and you're right. Totally enjoyable. Totally beautiful, and definitely Guillermo del Toro. And nobody else comes close. One of a kind filmmaker, and yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. All right, now we've talked about all that stuff. It's time to get down to the very bottom of it and compare it to the first film, and then also talk about its critical reception this time around. I can tell you that it was 85% tomato, certified fresh this time around. Again, it seemed like more people liked it, and 71% popcorn on the average viewer side. So that being said, I know how you feel about the film. It did make some more money, but tell me what you think critically of the film.
Yeah, it made more money. They spent more money, but it made more money. It was a success by any means. So the fact that we didn't get a third is kind of strange and shocking that it kind of fell apart that way. It did what it needed to do. You wonder if it was good enough, like from a fan's perspective. Like, did everyone like it, or did some of the people who went to see it expecting more of what they saw the first time around and walked out of the theater unhappy and maybe would have not seen a third one? I guess we'll never know, but it's still
that's true.
It was Guillermo, it was Ron Perlman. They're the stars of this. They shine through, and everyone else is along for the ride.
Yeah. Something else I want to mention too here. When we use these numbers from Flickster, please understand that we know that they are not the end all be all. They're just a gauge for us to show some type of numbers, some type of system, rather than just, we could easily go back and find box office and total them all up and do all that stuff. But this gives you a good gauge of what's happening and what to expect when you see these films. And
the ratings for older films are a little tougher
different.
Different world. I don't think there was any blogsters that actually were allowed to be counted towards a certified back then. Maybe a few, but we're talking a minor amount compared to this now.
For sure. Definitely agree with you. Okay, now that we've covered the whole spectrum, Andrew, I want you to get into what could have happened and what's going to happen now with our Hellboy franchise.
Well, what's kind of interesting is I want to talk really fast. I have the synopsis of what supposedly Hellboy 3 was going to be, the movie that didn't happen. So it was supposed to be in development in 2009, and it was going to be called Hellboy 3 Dark Worlds. Del Toro was supposed to return as the director. Ron Perlman was coming back. Doug Jones, Seth MacFarlane, and Selma Blair were all returning. They were going to, the sequel was going to be about Hellboy living a normal life as a father with his 2 newborn twins and with Liz. But they also have to face an extremely powerful enemy who wishes to rule and bring darkness upon the earth. What does that sound like to you? Does that sound like something you wanted to see?
I think the third one probably would have been, I think it would have been its shark jump. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know that I was ready to already see Hellboy as a dad. That's gonna, if you look at it, you know, filmatically, you would expect it to hold him back from doing certain things. Mm-hmm. Because now he's got as a father, I know it would hold me back because I've got kids on my mind. I've got Liz to worry about. I have all these things, and maybe that was the dynamic they were going to play off of. Maybe that's what they could have done. You know, but I'm always, what gives me hope in these things. If anybody else was doing it, I probably would have said, I don't know. But you know, if it was like Guillermo del Toro, I'm kind of on board. I'm kind of on board to see it and to see what he would do. But to me, I think that would have been one too many. I was good with the 2 that we had. I'm not sure. What did you think?
Well, I think they need to end the story. This is something I forgot to say about 2 that I didn't like. 2 did feel like it was a setup film. You know how when you get those setup films that they're, and there's parts, especially going back to Liz, where that whole thing about the twins, and she goes, well, if you make this choice, something bad's going to happen to you later. We never get to find out what the bad is because the bad is supposed to be in the next movie. So it's like almost there was no consequence to what she did to bring Hellboy back because we never saw the consequence. Right. And yeah, I would have liked to see it end. I wish that they would have been given their opportunity to wrap this up in a nice little bow and give us the 3 and it'd be over. And it'd make it easier to move on to the reboot, if you ask me, knowing that that had finished.
Before we talk about the reboot, I want to give my little 2 cents here. Well, we do know what the end is. See, that's the thing. If you watch the first film, Gregory Rasputin gives us a hint of his future. And then the Angel of Death in the second film re-emphasizes again, and I'm talking about this again, that his destiny is to bring the end of the world. And the reason I bring this up is it was just, I'd say probably a year after the second one came out, they were asking Ron Perlman whether or not a third could be made or whether he'd be interested. And of course he was interested, but he said something very logical. I don't think either one of us knows this. We don't delve into the Hellboy comics enough. But his destiny is to become the person who brings about the destruction of the world. So how do you put that on film? How do you make that a movie that people are going to want to go see to see the end of the world? Basically, an entire to bring it to a head and bring it to an end and fulfill his destiny. It's Armageddon. There's none of us left. It's hell on earth. So
you change it. You simply change it. I think they would have changed the ending and had him almost do that. And at the end, he makes the right choice because maybe we have flashbacks. Hurt comes back, and the influence of Bloom, his surrogate father, convinces him otherwise. And at the end, he doesn't bring about the apocalypse. Now, well, that goes off of canon and off of what that's the way you end a movie, unfortunately. You can't sell a movie with him, boom, and it's all over. Him standing over dead bodies, you know.
But yeah, you're right. And so that's why I said I think they were having a difficult time coming up with the script. I know they had this in mind, and I think that was okay. So who's going to do 4 and 5? And of course, we didn't touch on it, but a couple things of note here. Guillermo del Toro turned down quite a few movies for both of these movies. Okay. Nothing too major, but twice he turned down Harry Potter movies. The Prince of Azkaban they offered to him. And then I can't remember the other Harry Potter, but on 2, he turned that down. He also turned down I Am Legend. He turned down Alien versus Predator. And again, these aren't blockbuster necessarily. The Harry Potters might have been, but he turned these down to focus on these two, and I think he did a pretty good job considering. Where we go with a third, I don't know, but I don't know. Let's talk about the reboot.
Let's
talk about the reboot.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I think he made the right choice because with Hellboy, he was given the opportunity to create his vision and work freely and unencumbered.
Right.
You get into the Harry Potter world, man. It's like doing Star Wars or Marvel or whatever. The Harry Potter people are right here. Nope, can't do that. Nope, can't do that. Nope, that doesn't look right. We got to run this by JK. Nope. I don't think he would have functioned well in that world, and he would have got frustrated. Kind of like the Lord of the Rings thing, the Hobbits. He wanted to do his own thing, and people are like, no, that's not what Peter Jackson did. So it's hard to do that.
Well,
so
you're absolutely right, and it's because we brought it up. I want to get to this so we can get back to the reboot. But it's something else I learned about Guillermo del Toro, and I didn't notice it in my research for the first one, but for the second one for sure. And let me tell you, the reason why his movie shoots are long, and the reason why everything looks so good, and the reason is it's all definitely Guillermo del Toro. There is no second unit. There is no side unit. It is all Guillermo del Toro, one unit, one function, everybody on set. We go. He says from time to time he might use what they call a splinter unit, but he says he hops on his bike and he goes over there. He is in full hands-on total control, just like you just said.
And he uses a shit ton of cameras.
Right.
He's notorious for that. He uses a lot of cameras. So he gets a lot of angles of what he wants.
Clearly he does. So we definitely know what he's doing. So let's now talk about our Guillermo del Toro-less world of the Hellboy reboot.
The Hellboy reboot.
What do you got for us, Andrew?
Well, it's going to be called Rise of the Blood Queen, and it's supposed to take an even more horror-themed idea. It's going to be rated R, so they're going to go dark. Possibly we'll have blood. It's going to be scary. It's going to scare children, so it's not going to be a little fun movie. I don't know. I'm in the middle with this. It's kind of that whole everything's got to be rated R now thing. So
who's in this one, Andrew?
Ian McShane is going to play Professor Broom. Awesome.
Right.
David Harbour is playing Hellboy. Milla Jovovich, is that how you say her name?
Jovovich
is going to play the Blood Queen. And very famously, we all know, is Dae Kim is going to play Ben Daimio, because it originally wasn't going to be him. It was going to be Ed Scarin, and that was a non-Asian actor playing Asian role. And
there was
happy about that
huge whitewashing controversy. We do not talk about whitewashing controversies on this show as much as possible. They are no-win situations. We have our own thoughts and feelings, but that sounds like a pretty tremendous cast. So now that we know these things. Yeah, what do you think? Are you in? Are you sold? Will you go to the Hellboy reboot?
I probably will. I forgot to mention the director, Neil Marshall, is doing this. It's interesting. Again, I'm not a horror guy, so I wonder how horror. If it's like horror to the level of like It, I'm okay. Where it's a story with some horror. But if it's straight up scares and like gore, it might not be my thing. We've seen a still of Hellboy. He looks great. People are making a big deal because his hair looks long, but if you've watched these other two movies, his hair is long. It's in a top knot. Look closely. His hair is back there in a top knot, and he does have longer hair. So this just happened to be a picture of him with his hair down. No biggie.
I actually love the idea of all this stuff, and I love the actor playing Hellboy because, I hate to say it, he looks like a spot-on image. If the fact that his arm in the photo and things were slightly different and his hair was down, you're right. Look, it's a top knot. He just took it off. He looks like Ron Perlman.
Yeah.
He looks like Ron Perlman as Hellboy. So the Hellboy character, other than possibly the voice when he starts speaking, you're not going to notice much of a difference. You're really not.
And mannerisms. I mean,
you
really see Perlman's mannerisms. And having just watched it recently, I watched Sons of Anarchy, another one I'm real fond of. It's the same types of mannerisms you see in Clay and Sons of Anarchy. There's just some things that Perlman brings to that's him, uniquely him. So, yeah. It's a challenge.
Yeah,
you got to reboot. You know what I mean? You have to. Yeah. You and I get in this argument so much. You have to recast at some point. The actors cannot live forever. You know, Sean Connery can no longer be James Bond. I'm sorry.
Okay. You're right. But see, here is a good cause for a reboot, because Hellboy 2 came out several years ago. Mm-hmm. Okay, we've been away from this. What I'm saying is, you know, I don't want to get into this conversation you and I've had in many podcasts about continuity. Okay, I don't want to go to Thor Ragnarok and see my characters, and then next year see a character from Thor Ragnarok that's supposed to be one character, and all of a sudden we're supposed to believe it's somebody else now. If you want to reboot it and put it in a different story and then bring that person into the fold, that's where I talk about continuity. It's totally different. If you want to stop making Captain Americas for 4, 5, maybe even 6 years, and then introduce a new one, I am down. Don't do it back to back. Don't give me a new Captain America in my Infinity Wars when I know it's been Chris Evans all these years. Finish, reboot the story. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
So I'm going to tell you, what if in that X-Force movie, we got Deadpool, we got Cable,
I know.
What
I know
if
what you're going to do.
A brand new Wolverine who belongs on that team, and it's not Laura. Let's say it is Logan, and we have a recast of Logan, and you're telling me much as you like Deadpool and you're anticipating Deadpool 2, I know you are, you're going to not do X-Force because it's a recast of Logan?
No, because I'll tell you why. Because Logan is dead. Right now he's dead. And if they bring him back in this, now we're talking about a whole new thing. See, it's a new project. You made my point for me.
They go to Professor X, they go to the mansion and everything. Is it in a different world?
To me, it will be. In my own mind, I've already watched Logan enough times to watch him, spoiler alert, if you're still with us, die in the woods with X-23 there. He's gone to me. So if you give him to me again, then that's okay. Now he's gone. There was a reason. You're not just saying he was still alive and then a year later come out with a new one and he's supposed to be with Deadpool and he's a totally different person. At least you killed this one off, even though he's supposed to be the same guy. I'm good with that. I can't explain it better than that. Whether it makes sense to people, I don't know. I think we've gotten off on a tangent.
Yeah, I probably have a rebuttal, but let's move forward.
This is a whole other podcast. This is why we do these things, just for you guys. All right. So, Andrew, I think we've kind of nailed everything here in part 2, the Golden Army. I do want to mention one last thing here because I don't want people to think that we're forgetting, and I think that you and I made a point of talking about it before we started part 2 here, and that is, we do know that Jeffrey Tambor is in this movie as Manning. The problem is Jeffrey Tambor character in the first one was rather annoying, and in the second one he's kind of annoying, and he plays more of an ass kiss. So, kudos to him being able to play that character really well, but I don't want people to think that we actually blew him off or forgot about him.
Yeah, to me, he's not memorable. He just moves the story along. He plays your typical, okay, I'm the organization and you need to behave, Hellboy. Oh, but I'm sorry, you saved my life, Hellboy.
Basically, to me, he's the substitute teacher that you make fun of when her back is turned.
Yeah. So
So just wanted to put that out there. All right. So, Andrew, what do you say we wrap this one up?
Let's wrap this up.
Thank you guys for joining us on part 2 now of our Tricks and Treats October event special. We got so much more to come for you. Lots of work ahead. Don't forget, next week, we're also at some point, please look for a Blade Runner review from Andrew and I'm looking forward to that. I am seeing that tonight being Thursday premiere night. And we will have that for you along with our next part 3 of the October event special. Andrew, what should we give to them for part 3?
London.
This is a film I've yet to see. That's right. It's From Hell. Listen for our review and breakdown of From Hell to come out next week alongside our Blade Runner review. So, Andrew, anything else before we say so long?
Nope. That's all.
Beep. That's all, folks. All right. We're going to wrap this up. Listen, don't forget to join us next week. If you're looking for us on Twitter, you can find me at voodoo_57 on the Twitter sphere. Andrew, where can they find you?
Find me at Real Comics, REELCOMICS.
That's right. And you can also follow us on YouTube's also at the Real Comics Podcast. You can follow us on the Twitter sphere on our podcast feed. That is at Real, REEL_podcast. Talk to us. Let us know what you think about our event special. Let us know what you think of the movies we're reviewing for you and bringing back. Our focus is the dark side of comic books. But until next time, be your own hero.
Thank you.